Hi friends, another video today in my playlist of chord melodies. This one's a bit different though. Normally I just play the tune that I've written this chord melody for and provide a link to the PDF to download and do what you will with it. This one I'm going to be doing a little bit different in that I'll play through it, I'll provide the PDF and then walk through it in detail, and I'll put some chapters in the description so you can jump around. So some folks might want to just get the download and others might want to go through and understand a bit of the process. I'm going to relate it a lot to some of the other videos that I've made and some of the things that I go through, and I'm contemplating putting this kind of thing together, and hopefully you'll find that useful. But really the main thing I'm hoping to get, if you don't mind, is some feedback on this process. Not just the music, but my delivery of this stuff. Because I'm trying to decide whether to continue with making these videos, these chord melodies in particular, because they're quite a lot of work. And I have made the downloads available for a small fee of $5 on my website. But I'd love feedback on that. Is that reasonable cost? Is it too much, too little? Is the quality good? Is the PDF readable and understandable? So any feedback, good or bad, you could give me would be very much appreciated, so I can make some decisions going forward. So let's jump right in. This is Thad Jones' classic, "A Child is Born." So that's the piece. I'm not sure if you can hear these birds right outside my window, but they distracted me a little bit, but it's quite beautiful. Anyway, so let's dive in. A little disclaimer before we get started. This PDF in the description of this video, if you look at the first link that I'll add, is completely free, so you can just download it directly. I usually add to the footers of the descriptions in all my other videos links to my website for whatever reason. And I'm also going to have this PDF available on my website for $5 like all the others. But if for some reason you end up buying it in the future and then seeing this video and going, "What the hell, man, you made it available for free, but I just paid $5. Don't worry, because everyone who downloads any of my videos, any of my chord melodies, I send them an email and say, "Hey, I'm going to give you another one for free. Pick one, and whichever one you want, you can have for free." So, so there's that. So let's dive in. I have the actual PDF on another laptop right here. Give me 1 second to pull it up. So we're going to walk through. If you download the link in the PDF and come back to this section of the video, we can go through basically bar by bar what's happening with this tune. So at a very high level, to me, the most important aspect of playing good chord melodies is the melody, right? The melody should really stand out. It should be clear. It should be dynamically maybe a little bit above some of the harmonic content. So hopefully you heard that in my playing, and if not, we'll go through it in a little bit of detail. But the point being that the written document, what I try to do is keep the documents as really as simple as I can make them. I don't add a huge amount of dynamic markings and phrasing and things like that to clutter it. I try to just present the ideas as simply as possible, but then you need to inject some life into them. So that's another aspect, of course, if you're familiar with my channel. There's the whole physical, logical side, and then there's the intuitive, magical side. So this is a good example of that, where we have this very logical, linear chart that we can look at and read, but you've got to supply the lifeblood to it. And that's the most important aspect. So I'd love any feedback on the clarity of the documentation if you care to give it. So download the PDF. Let's jump in. This tune's in 3. It's a waltz. It's in the key of B flat. And the most dominant or predominant chord progression here is moving from the 1 chord, as you can see in the first 6 bars, the 1 chord being B flat major 7, this is just a typical drop 2 voicing of a B flat major 7, root 5th, 7th, and 3rd. On top, the melody is the D natural. So when I play, I played this with a pick and fingers. A lot of times I play just with my fingers, but hopefully you can hear I'm doing this sort of roll where I'm playing that D a little louder. Now it goes to the 4 minor chord. And I have a whole video on this, and in fact I'll link it here, about the harmonic major scale, what I called the alternative to the altered dominant scale. You might want to come back to check that one out at some point. Very useful scale. So if we think in terms of, we're in the key of B flat, right? 2 flats. The 4 chord is an E flat minor 6. Normally the 4 chord is an E flat major 7, right? But in this case, it's a minor. Now, if we take a B flat major scale and we lower the 6th degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is normally a G natural, move it to a G flat, but leave everything else the same. This is what's called the harmonic major scale. And that gives us this 4 minor. It's not the only one, but it's the one I'm thinking about in this case. Some people would say, oh, it's minor 6. It's really a Dorian sound, and that could be possible too. But there's many options, well, some options here, and that's the one that I'm kind of thinking about. So that's just a very broad, like the most common chord movement here is moving from the 1 chord to the 4 minor. And there's plenty of others. So the voicing I'm using here, again, is this root position B, drop 2 B flat major 7. If you simply move all the notes except the root up a half step, now we have G flat, B flat, and E flat. This is the shell of an E flat minor chord. So I'm basically doing this, right? Then I'm using the bar of my first finger, my index finger, to play the melody notes. The melody goes E flat, F, B flat, but I'm using E flat as part of the voicing, and then F and B flat barred, right? So that's the repeated on the first 6 bars. And sometimes I do some interpretation, and this is where, you know, your creativity should come in. Sometimes I play the low B flat more often than not, instead of what I wrote, which was just very simple dotted half notes with the melody on top. And then it moves to this chord. So if you looked at the chart, this tune's in the real book. If you look at the real book, it'll say this is an A flat minor 7 chord, A flat minor 7 flat 5. I'm sorry, A minor 7 flat 5. to a D7. But what I used instead was a D7. What I'm thinking of is a D7 sus with a flat 9 in it. Move into a D7, the sus resolving down to the third. So I have a whole nother video about that, about modernizing your 2/5 chords modernizing your 2/5 progressions by using sus chords. I'll link that one here. And this is an example of that. So in bar, if you have the chart, we're on now bar 7 and 8, which is the D7 sus with a flat 9, the open D, the flat 9, the E flat, the G is the sus, and the melody note on top, and then that G moves down a half step to the F sharp, the third of the D7 chord. So that sus resolves. Okay, and then we go, the chord is a G minor, but if you know my channel, you know that I'm interested in counterpoint and different chord voicings and this kind of thing. So here's an example of some counterpoint where the melody note, I'm playing the melody note and then playing the playing the ninth and the third together as a really crunchy dissonance, but quickly resolving that down scalar wise from A to G to F, and then playing D7, in this case what I'm calling D7 altered. And here's another one of my videos, if you look at this one, about a single voicing with many uses. So many people would look at this voicing, which is the notes C, F sharp, or G flat, and enharmonically, B flat, and E flat, and say, oh, that's a C minor 7 flat 5 chord. And if the C was the root, that would be true. But D is the root. So that means C is the flat 7, F sharp is the third, B flat is the flat 13, and E flat is the flat 9. So this is I'm thinking of this as D7 altered, even though it looks like a C minor 7 flat 5 chord. So again, video linked there discussing that concept. And then a D7 sharp 9 with the melody note on top. I think most people recognize this as the Hendrix chord, right? And then now we're into bar 9. Bar 9, 10, 11, another back to G minor. And I'm doing that same thing, but this time a bit of a variety of, rhythmic variety of changing. The counterpoint is descending. And then they get these chords. So let's go through this. So this is, again, the flat third and the root, the fifth, which is the melody note, we're on D natural. The chord we have is G minor, but I'm only playing these two notes, and then trying to keep that B flat ringing while I play the A to get this contrapuntal sound, right? The top voice needs to continue to ring while the bottom voice moves. And then some substitutions, right? B flat minor 11. And then I've got this could be thought of several ways. What I'm really thinking of is counterpoint here. I want this sound to do this, right? So I'm playing B flat minor 11 because the E flat, the 11th, is the melody note, and then it's kind of like an A minor 7 chord, except the melody note is an F. So these just move down a half step, but the melody note moves up a whole step. And then A flat 13 with the B flat on top, which is the melody note, resolving to G minor. This is a pretty common way to play a G minor 7. We're skipping the 5th string, so we got the root in the bottom, a bar across the middle 3 3 strings. And then I got this another counterpoint line going down on the bass now, leading into a C9 chord. I think this is probably a pretty common chord for most folks. So, and the open E is the melody note, and then I hit the low E to have something ringing while we move the melody note, because the melody goes open E, G, and then C. So to move that distance, we have to move our hand, right? We can't hold this and reach up there. So I'm using that low E as a sort of a mask of sustain on the lower voices. And then we get up to a C minor. Now we're at, where are we? We're at 13, 14. We're at bar 15. I'm calling this C minor 11. So the ninth is on the melody note, and then barred across the 8th fret, we've got from low to high F, which would be the 4th, B flat, the flat 7, E flat, the flat 3rd, G, the 5th, and the melody note on top. But then I play the root separately. So it's basically this chord, right? And then this B7 sharp 9 chord, which is the F sharp on the top. That's the melody note, but I'm barring the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings to get this sound, and then the B as the root note there. So I'm playing the melody note first, then the chord, then the low note. So from the C minor 11, it's the melody note, the chord, then the bass note. Then we get to this, and then I got to move to the second page. Now another, for me, a very interesting concept, especially for solo guitar playing, but really even for ensembles. When the bass player plays a pedal point, right? He or she stays on the same note while the harmonies change. It can really add this beautiful tension. And it doesn't always have to be on the bottom. It could be on the top or in the middle. But in this case, I decided to use this pedal point, this B flat, that's going to stay there while we move through some different chord shapes. So the first one is B flat 6/9. The melody is an F. So I've got the root B flat, the 6th G, the 9th C, and of course the melody F. That's a B flat 6/9 chord, right? And then what I'm basically thinking of here is moving these middle notes of the chord down a half step, which kind of gives us that E flat minor by having the G flat. But it's a little bit of a different color because it's not really E flat minor has a B flat. In this case, we have a C flat. So I wrote this as a B triad, a B major triad, D sharp, B natural, and F sharp, or enharmonically, we could think of this as E flat, C flat, and G flat, with a B flat on the bottom. So that's the idea here. So back to now bar 17, B flat 6/9. So what I'm doing here is playing the melody note, the melody, E flat, F, B flat, down to D. But with each of these, I'm moving those middle voices chromatically down so that we end with this B flat triad. So again, it goes B flat triad, B over or B flat, back to B flat, and then some bass motion to a D7 sharp 9, to another inversion of a D altered chord. So in this case, I physically, I can't really get that note or reach to get that high C. I can't really do that. So so again, from the D7 altered, this is an E flat major 9 chord, so an F natural on top. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky depending on how you're using your right hand, because we don't want to play the 5th string. So I'm barring with my index finger. The low string, I got my root, the E flat, the major 7, the 3rd, and the 5th. But the way that I play, if I'm using a pick, I play the low note with my pick, and I play the middle notes with my other fingers. Middle finger, ring finger, index finger. So I play, again, the melody is alone. The first note is, we're in bar, what bar are we in here? We're in bar 23. The first note is F on top alone, and then it's, right, then to E flat. Thinking of this as an A flat 7 or an A flat 9 chord. Should be pretty familiar with that, with E flat on the top, but I left the E flat on the bottom to share between these two chords because I just like the sound of that. Again, it's more a little bit of a pedal point sort of a sound. And then we gotta pull off from G flat to F to a simple B flat major triad. And here's where it gets kind of interesting is the next chord. So now we're in bar 26. I'm playing, bar 25 is a simple B flat triad, right? Melody notes the 5th, the 3rd, the root, and the 5th doubled at the bottom. Then I move these up a half step, but the 4th string goes up to a C. So I have G flat, C, E flat, and F. So I'm thinking of this as an E flat minor 6 chord. Getting that sound, okay? But what I'm doing melodically is playing them 2 strings at a time. So the melody note is E flat, F, and B flat. Those are the 3 melody notes, which are on the first 3 strings. But when I play the 3rd string, I also double with my pick the 5th string, and then when I move to the F, I double the 4th string, and then when I move to the B flat, I double the 3rd string. So you get this kind of harpish sound, right? Okay, that takes us to bar 27, which is G minor 7. That's the chord that's suggested, but what I'm actually playing is another B flat major triad. Now, you would say, why are you thinking of that? That's kind of a long story. It's not, I mean, there's a B flat triad inside an a G minor 7 chord, right? So that's what I'm playing, like a rootless G minor 7 chord. But again, here's an example of some counterpoint where I want to have the bottom voice move ascending, and then while the melody is ascending in the next bar, have the counterpoint descending. So we have some contrary motion, right? We have them coming together and then them moving apart. And that was the effect I was trying to get. And here's the idea. So bar 27 is, that's the lower voice. While we're sustaining the melody, which is a D natural, we have the lower voice moving. And then this is the downbeat of bar 28. I'm playing 2 E naturals together. An E natural on the 2nd string and an E natural on the 3rd string. You would say, why would you do that? Well, because I want to get this effect of counterpoint. I want to hear one of them sustaining while the other one's moving. So that's the concept here. right. So hopefully you can hear here's the melody from bar 27. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But when we add the counterpoint, whoops, we get that. So it's all in there. Hopefully you can read that tab and it becomes kind of clear. That's probably the most tricky thing in the chord melody. But then we have what I'm thinking of as a C minor 11 chord, although most people would look at this and go, what? No, that's a G minor 11 chord. Well, again, the video I mentioned earlier about same voicing, many uses, I'm thinking of it as the root is being a C. So if C were the root, then we have G, which is the 5th, C, which is the root, F, which is the 11th, B flat the 7th, flat 7th, and D the 9th. So I'm thinking of it as a C minor 11 chord, so it just doesn't have the root on the bottom. And then I'm thinking of the next chord as an F flat 9. Now most people would go, oh, F flat 9 is like this, like F 3rd, 7th, and flat 9. Well, I have the flat 9 on the bottom, the G flat, and then F triad. It's basically like a G flat triad. I'm sorry, an F triad, F, A, and C, with the G flat on the bottom. And I'm thinking of it as an F7 with a flat 9. There happens to be no 7th in this chord. That's okay. It's a 2-5-1 going back to B flat. So this is bar 29, C minor 11, F, 7 flat 9, and then some more counterpoint. The melody note is, the chord is a B flat, but the melody note is C, so it's the 9th sustains in the melody. So I have a little melodic line there starting on the root, B flat, C, D, E natural to F. I'm thinking of a Lydian sound. And then the next chord is an E flat 7, if you look in the chart in the real book. But I'm playing a line, playing basically a similar line, but changing the D natural to a D flat to get that E flat 7 sound. So here's bar 29, 30, 31. And then finally it ends with that C on the top with the B flat major 7. And this is the same voicing we used earlier up on E flat, where we have the bar going across, but we don't want to play that 5th string because that note doesn't belong to this chord. So I'm skipping it by doing that. So that's the tune. So I hope this was useful for some if you made it this far. I assume it was. But I would really appreciate any feedback, again, on the process, the quality of not just the music, but the delivery. Is the PDF accurate and readable? And hopefully, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll find that a lot of the stuff that I talk about is embedded in here. You know, different chord voicings, counterpoint, rhythmic ideas, and then, of course, creativity, breathing that life into the music. That's so important. It's vital. I know we didn't talk about it a lot. This was more about the mechanics. But if you go back and listen to how I played at the beginning, and please be aware that there's probably some interpretations where I've changed. I might have played it slightly different than what I wrote, but that's the creative process, right? So I never play it the same way exactly twice. So have some fun with it. So hope you enjoy it, and please, if you have some feedback, I'd love to hear it.